when it comes to this part is if it's not in their ingredient deck on their product label, it doesn't belong there. And I love that, right? So when I heard that, and I was like, that's cool. Here we go again. Next topic is external audits and certifications. So on this part of it is that required? Are you going to perform on-site audit? You're the brand owner. Are you going to hire somebody, a third-party auditors to perform those things? We particularly perform those for our clients where we come in and basically just do that report on behalf of the brand. We don't go outside of that information because of that type of requirements for the customer. Now, some customers that are just starting out, they might not have that team, so they are reliant on the facility's certification audit. If they are a GFSI audited body, they would just rely on that information. And then some folks or some big box store, they have their own addendum that they have a contract with the certification body, for them to use, and that's submitted to them, and they pay that, for that. So it all depends on your process, but you need to audit your co-man or co-packers. Okay. Next part is PRP programs. So are those written out? And are they fully understood? Do you understand them as a brand owner? What are the prerequisite programs, for the facility? So you want to get those laid out and be familiar with those. Next part is housekeeping and sanitations. So obviously, all of this is going to affect the finished product. So you're gonna want to make sure those are covered. Now let me just do some touch points on that one, on cleaning and sanitation. Make sure the food spillages, sometimes things get spilled, make sure those are incorporated on the housekeeping and sanitation. People being cut, blood, sometimes you don't see that, right? So if they are processing, like especially if your product involves cutting and grinding and all of that activities, what would happen if somebody cut their hands? What does that look like? Because now they have there's blood all over the place. What does that look like? That's going to affect your product. So what type of protocols they have written out for that? And also when people are sick, I've been to plant where you hear a lot of sniffles. Nose are runny, or it could be the flu season. I know we just went through the pandemic with COVID, but all of these things that if the personnel on staff are ill, do you want to see them there? Should they be sent home? So those are the type of things you need to ask, because sometimes those are not being administered or implemented, even though it's in their program and it's clearly right in front of you, and nobody's doing anything about it. We've discussed housekeeping and sanitation. To add part of that is, do they have a master sanitation schedule? And you can do a deep dive on that based on their program, especially frequency of cleaning and the separation of cleaning functions. What I mean by that is, what is the protocol before they run your product? So are they clearly identifying the allergens that was just produced or handled previous to yours? So how do they clear the line? Do all those allergen management. Make sure it's not cross-contaminating your product line. For that. So those are the type of things that you need to know. Are they swabbing for listeria? Especially if your product is RTE. What does that look like for you? Sometimes if you don't know, they're not going to tell you. You not knowing, it's not an excuse when it comes to public safety, right? As a PCQI, you have that responsibility to put those things together. Okay. All right. On the verification of cleaning, for ATP testing, You know, what does that look like? You know, do you know, of course, you're going to ask them what their ATP testing programs look like, and do they have a re-cleaning procedures? I've seen activities that, let's say you have a table and it failed on the ATP test, and they're just going to clean that. Now they're, you know, they're spreading all of these other things. They're spraying water and whatnot. You know, what does it look like on the other parts of it? What are the swabbing points for ATP, right? Are they just the high touch points, or are they actually also swabbing different areas of the of that surface that's not normally, you know, think that's being scrubbed? Like, you know, so you need to work as a PCQ. I work with your QA QC on that. Basically, you know, are they just swabbing this big? Are they swabbing this big? Or are they swabbing the whole surfaces? You know, ask them, you know, or are they swabbing the touch points, you know, under the table when you grab things, or the grab points and whatnot? Are they looking at that part of it? Later on, when we do some swabbing techniques, we'll discuss those as well. When you're swabbing, for example, Listeria, and you're sending it to the lab, and how, you know, and how you do all of those with vector swabbing and whatnot. Next part is the GMPs. Obviously, you're going to ask those questions, and we've talked about allergen and microbiological cleaning for that. Now, to validate micro, it's just really swab and sending it to the lab. ATP will not let you know. You know, I've seen people that says, you know, we use ATP for that. Okay. All right. No comment. You know, for micro, my eyes are bad, you know. So, you know, the lab will do that for you. They'll provide you those information, okay? So, and do you get a report for those validation testing, right? Or those results? Do you get a copy of it? You know, it's your product, it's your process. You know, do you care to know, right? So that's one thing. You should get that. It's your product, it's your brand, okay? And then on the cleaning equipment, you might want to write up some protocols of what that looked like. Is it clean in place, clean out of place? You know, things that they use. You know, are they using foamers, things like that, high pressured hoses, and you know, so there's a lot in the consulting or in the food safety world about high pressured hoses. Some prefer them, some don't. You know, because they just spray things all over the place, or spread things all over the place, and some people prefer not to use them because, you know, they want to contain those type of contaminants in one area as much as they can. Let me see. Most important part of this is sanitation training. So the sanitation staff, as you know, the workforce, sometimes it's hard to get folks, especially in this part of or this department. So you, sometimes your co-man or co-packing partner has a revolving door, right? They hire 10 people. By Friday, there's only maybe 1 to 3 left, and they do that every week or every month, and it's a HR nightmare. But for you, your concern for that is those turnovers and the amount of training. So when your products start failing, and you're gonna notice this because you're gonna get phone call through customer complaint. You're gonna get phone calls. Hey, this is already moldy. I just got it. You know, it's 3 days old. It says right here that it's good for 60 days or 30 days or 21 days, and it's only the 5th day, and it's already moldy. What's going on, right? I'm never gonna buy your product again. Oh, you see what I mean? So that affects it, and that basically, that's how you validate the sanitation as well, is based on customer complaint. If your finished product is dirty, sanitation didn't do their job, right? Or contaminated, I should say. Now, one of the famous saying, me working with, you know, a big brand, you know, when it comes to this part is, if it's not in their ingredient deck on their product label, it doesn't belong there. And I love that, right? So when I heard that, and I was like, that's cool. Okay, so we need to take that position as PCQI. If it's not part of the ingredient list, it doesn't belong in that product, okay? Product and process controls, same thing, right? So you're gonna have your process controls identified, especially when dealing with your finished product specifications, what those look like. So on the processing part of this, it's basically on recipe or formulation controls. Obviously, those are going to come, and make sure those are approved. Okay. Sometimes there's so many deviations on recipes and cooking instructions, and then the product that doesn't turn out right. Because there were so many changes, who is the authorized person or designee to sign off on those, and then make sure they get signed. When they're accepting it, they also sign for it. It's a good practice, especially when you're using a master manufacturing record. If you're applying that to your system, those are great because there's a chain of custody per se on that master manufacturing instructions. Okay, so it was issued, let's say I signed off on it, and then I give it to you, and you accepted it, and then an hour later, 30 minutes later, my formulator called me and says, hey, call them back, or let me send this to the partner, and they didn't sign off on it. Now they're gonna get confused. Who's got the authority for that? So make sure those are identified, who's signing off on your formulation and recipe controls. And then mixing instructions, make sure you put everything there, especially if you're doing blenders and mixers. Speed on machines is very, very vital. Viscosity when you have different type of blender, ribbon blender, paddle blenders, and whatnot. When they're hitting your product, it causes heat, right? Because there's a transfer of energy. And sometimes it's already cooking your product and you don't even know it, and then you're looking at it. Let's say you're doing a dry process, why the discoloration, the smell, right? So make sure all of those are identified. Okay, speed, time, okay, your equipment process settings. Make sure those are those are documented. If you're doing cooking or baking, what are the times and temperature that needs to be met. And do they match your process narrative on your food safety HACCP plan for your CCP? Okay, for your CCP documentation, if that's a part of your process. Cooling times. So if you've done your baking and cooking and it's going to sit there, what are your cooling times and temperatures? Okay, before they go to the next step, and then labeling instructions. Okay, so make sure those are written out as well with label controls and whatnot. Next part of it is coding and shelf life marking. I like it if there's a form and they put the lot code and people actually sign off on it, that was issued for that day, and the QC or the QA or the supervisor or lead, whoever is going to be coding it in your machine, that actually they have that, and then they can actually verify it. QC comes out and verifies it and signs off on that, and you would just put that on file for that day, that it's been complied with the proper lot coding and batch coding numbering system. And any other CCP points, I kind of jumped on this one earlier. Make sure those are documented based on that process I just described. And make sure it follows your HACCP and food safety plan, okay? Make sure they match, especially on temperature and time. Now, when you're signing off on this, it's best practice to if you're performed by, you obviously there's a date, for example, today's date, and then I checked it at 2 p.m. Make sure it's a date and time on the performance. All right, and those are very important because sometimes I do an audit, there were no time, there's just a date, and I'm beginning to ask, when did you take these or record these activities? And they said, oh, I did this one at 1, this one is at 2, so oh, this is hourly, but there's no time. And then I've seen observation where they totally forgot about it, and they go in and they have a magic pen for whatever reason, it just happens, right? And it's in front of you, and you're going, okay, now what, right? So now you're writing up a report and you're trying to fix that headache, okay? And then you're checking all the products, make sure they met all the temperature. Now you're going to get them tested, part of your finished product release program or your positive release program, for the pathogens that's quote unquote they were checked, or they could be undercooked, and the finished product goes to testing and now it tested positive. for that particular pathogen because it's undercooked, okay? And we can go on and on about that. Quality, right? The product is shrinking or it's too, whatever. Okay, so let's just go on a different topic. Packaging. Okay, so now this one is the same. So remember, this is your partner. Okay, PCQI. So you're the brand owner, and this is a partner, a co-manufacturer and co-packer. So you wanna list all the overall requirements on your packaging requirements. What does it look like per unit in a box or in a carton? How many cartons in a master pack? Master packs in a pallet. All of these, you want to be able to line those up. And there's other things on there, how to release it. Are you going to do finished product release? Test and hold. If you're not doing that, what are your parameters in releasing that product? Now, remember, you're the brand owner, so you have to accept these products. Okay, so that's the transfer from your production team at this point. So they produced it, it's sitting there. What do you do then? Do you, if you're in a different state, do they send you a video, a record? Do they send you the finished product? Does it get sent to the lab and you're relying on the lab test? What if it tested positive? What are your other testing protocol for that, So all of these has to be identified, okay? And you need to have them written out, okay? So then you have the receiving from them to you. Make sure those are identified. Sampling protocol from the finished product and testing for in your evaluation standards for that. It could be organoleptic or based on lab tests. And then dispositions. In the event such and such happened, what are your disposition measures? Make sure all of your dates are coded. Barcoding, UPC codes, all of those things, especially on master pack. Sometimes you have your own codes on them. Make sure those are verified and in place. So, and there's other stuff that we can talk about. So just get a hold of us and we'll walk you through these process. Now, there's other things here as preventive controls, like pest management, right? We're going to do a whole separate video on that, on pest control. For that, please watch that, because that's a big fail sometimes when, on certification audits, because there's so many things that goes on with pest management that people overlook. So I'm not gonna touch on all of that here, and we'll move on to the next one. Next part, we talked about micromanagement or microbiological management. For that, you need to put those out there. What does that look like? And if there is a positive on those tests, what are the protocol? Are you involving sanitation, maintenance, all of the other team? Does your co-man shuts down? And how do they manage all of that all the way to finished product, not just sanitation and whatnot. Same thing with chemical management. So these are some of your prerequisite program. And I actually did this one for chemical management. There's already a video for that, so please watch that. Warehouse operations. This basically is gonna work with you, with your team in warehousing. If, like I said, if you're buying your own materials, how are they warehoused and stored? And then your finished product, how are they managed? Okay, are you sending it out to a third party fulfillment centers, or are you going to manage it with your partners? So same thing with your storage and distribution standards, and then it's going into the GMPs. And next part is your foreign material control. And I know in the beginning of this series we talked about metal detection right away and the X-ray system, because sometimes when I'm evaluating a co-manufacturing partner, those are one of the first things that get asked. Believe it or not, some co-manufacturers don't do metal detection. It's basically on customer requirements. Don't ask me why. So it's being basically encouraged by the customer. So that's the first thing I ask. And of course for the X-ray, what do they do if they don't have an X-ray? What is their protocol for that? In exchange of not having one. Okay. So the foreign material control, what does that look like? And then their detection and removal. Now, if they're using other system for foreign materials like sifters, screens, sieves, strainers, or filters, or magnets, you know, what does that look like? And you know, what are their frequency on inspecting those, preventive measures, what are their corrective actions if they do discover foreign materials on those filtration system or screening system that I just mentioned. Glass and brittle breakable materials, you know, what does that look like for them? Are they keeping an eye out on them? You know, there's certain chemicals, by the way, that are in the industry that if they are left on the equipment too long, anything that basically a plexiglass or glass at this point, it cracks it. Okay, if you need more information on that chemical, let me know. info@consultairainc.com. I can't really disclose it to you, but I'll tell you what happened with those type of chemicals that was used by facility partners of ours, and it was a nightmare. There was a lot of stuff you had to remove and change, and it's just crazy. So PCQI, I know I've mentioned metal detector and X-ray in the beginning of this video series. So just make sure you have those checklists. So on this type of questionnaire, I'm just going to go over some of those categories. One is your allergen management. Right? Make sure you get those lined out. What you want to see for those allergens in your questionnaire or your food safety questionnaire. Make sure those are included. And training, right? So training of personnel and records, utilities and waste management. Make sure you got those covered in your evaluation form for this particular co-manufacturers and co-packers. Control of air, compressed air and gases. I've had a lot of videos about this as well. So if you've been watching this series, you can capture those in different videos. Control of water, ice, and steam. Okay, that's important. Now on the water, if it's part of your ingredient, you know, make sure you have all the proper protocol for water and testing and whatnot. Okay, ice and steam is covered with that, and then facility equipment, design and maintenance. Make sure you got those covered, and facility design, equipment design protocol, maintenance programs, your supplier management and verification. At the end of that, practices, what does that look like, and other actions that you need to have for implementation from your program. And these are all of your standards. You know, what are the action items that you need to input, and what are the frequencies of those, like on a monthly, weekly, or semi-annual basis. All right. So I'm going to end this series. I know it took a little bit longer. I sincerely apologize for that, because there's a lot of requirements. But if you do need help in putting these requirements together, you need help on-site, remote auditing, or virtual auditing. We perform a lot of those now. You need to go. You need for us to go on-site and perform these type of verification and activities with you and for you. If you're using a third-party, you know, certification body, you know, work with them. They're gonna have their own templates of what they ask for, but sometimes they're just two standards. There's standards on the GFSI, such as SQF, BRC, FSSE 22000, IFS, and whatnot. But you really want these to be your requirements. So you can take all of those standards that they have when you're working with the certification body or a third-party auditing agency, and you want to dictate based on your process, okay? So when you get those report, you know how to react to it and then become proactive instead of reactive in your process. Anyways, PCQI, thank you for your viewership, right? Please share and like and subscribe to our videos. And once again, thank you for your time, and see you next time. Have a good day. Bye for now.